Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So, before we dive in, please allow me to give a brief intro about Fitbud. And for those of you who might be new here, Fitbud helps you grow your fitness business with the power of your own app on iOS and Android. We also give you a dedicated and customizable website on your own domain. Beyond usual day to day operations, our platform is the only tool you'll ever need to seamlessly run your fitness business and build a robust digital brand. We also offer a 30-day free trial, so you can schedule your demo with our expert from the link we'll share in the chat soon. Moving on, I'm thrilled to introduce our host, the amazing Sarah. She's a fitness entrepreneur, business coach, and visionary with an impressive history of guiding coaches to their best in health and fitness business. So, without further delay, let's welcome Sarah to the virtual stage and start our webinar. Over to you, Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you for that intro. Sorry, guys, for the quick technical difficulties. We had some difficulties with needing to buy a new laptop after a drop last night. So we were just fixing configurations. So for anyone who's been to my webinars before, I like to ask a lot of questions. Just make sure I have an idea of where you guys are at before we get started so I can make sure that we're catering it based on like where your current struggles are and what you're trying to achieve. So just so I get an idea, could you mark a yes in the chat box if you are currently purely an online trainer? And then mark a no if you're purely online, and just give me a hybrid if you're doing a combination of both right now. So yes, if you're online, no if you're offline and working in a gym, and hybrid if you're currently doing a combination of both. Okay. So we have a lot of online, a couple offline, and a few hybrid. Okay, so follow-up question to that. If you answered hybrid or no, so that you're offline, you're only doing in-person training, do you want to either move or transition a part of your business online or all of it online? Just give me a yes if you want to transition your business more to an online model. Yes. Okay. Okay, cool. So we have a majority of people wanting to transition online. Some of you guys like probably the in-person component and want to have a combination of both. Okay, cool. So I am going to share screen. I'm going to dive into it a little bit. We'll definitely talk about online. We'll also talk about offline, so in-person training inside of the gym. Let me share screen, tell you guys a little bit about, and then I'll just come back every so often, stop sharing just so I can listen to you guys' comments or questions. If there are any questions, just type them in there and then I'll answer either throughout or at the end. So first things first, biggest thing we're going to talk about right today is going to be authentic selling. So without sounding like a used car salesman, I put there, because a lot of times, not everyone, but some of the biggest barriers to being able to grow a fitness business is selling. And a lot of times that's because we came in to become a coach, a personal trainer, not necessarily a salesperson. So there's some incongruency between what you came here to do. Just taking off my sweater because it's hot, and what you're trying to achieve. And a lot of that is going to consist of being able to convert clients so that you can help them, because you can't do that otherwise. So I'm going to tell you really, really quickly a little bit about myself so you know who the hell is talking to you. So I was actually a personal trainer for corporate gyms for over 12 years. I was working really long shifts. I was trading dollars for hours, and I was not happy at all. I ended up dropping out of college at some point. I paid a coach $10,000 and I opened my own gym for the first time. I'm from Canada, so I opened it somewhere in Canada, in Vancouver, anyone who knows. I really wanted to get out of the hustle. So originally when I opened the gym, it was very, very successful within a short period of time. And although that was a good thing, I didn't really have the business muscles to figure out how I was going to grow that gym. So what I actually ended up doing by opening the gym was creating a really high paying, but also high stress job for myself. So I was bringing in a lot of cash, but I was really miserable. Like I was working from 4 or 5 in the morning all the way till 8 or 9 at night, waking up doing the whole thing all over again, sometimes sleeping inside the gym. So I was at a point where I wanted to have more freedom and I wanted to have location freedom at the time. So I ended up shutting down that gym and I decided to start from scratch online. So after a couple years of struggle and trial and error and a lot of money spent on trial and error, I ended up growing my own online fitness business. So I didn't go hybrid. I just went from in person purely online. And I was able to build that business to multiple six figures using systems that I ended up teaching a lot of clients, and they still use it to this day to be able to grow their business. And so I'm going to dive into this a little bit. But before we do, the biggest thing here is just understanding. And the reason why I asked you guys, like, what is your biggest goal, because online training is very, very different in many ways from in-person training. And when I transitioned from in person to the gym that I had or the corporate gyms that I worked for to online, the biggest learning lesson was converting clients, because converting clients, I'll just be very forward, is much easier in person if you don't have the skill to do it the right way online. So these are some of the things that we want to talk about. And once you build the muscle of how to be able to convert clients and consistently bring in the right type of clientele, the in-person part, for those of you who want to have a hybrid model long term, becomes exponentially easier. So it becomes very, very easy because there is a very specific strategy to being able to convert online. Okay. So you see this, like, nobody wants to be this guy. This is the used car salesman looking a little bit sleazy. But sales is a massive part of client success. And most of us don't want to do sales, but there's only two ways to help people get healthy, get the results that they want. One, it's to help them for free. And two, it's to help them for a certain dollar amount, exchanging money for value. Just for those of you who have ever considered doing this, maybe longer than a couple testimonials, option A never works. And the biggest reason for that is when people don't have some kind of stake in the game, they don't take it seriously, nor do they value it. Think about anything that you've ever gotten for free. Did it really matter if it was free? Did you value it to the same degree if it was free? If you didn't pay for it, if there wasn't some kind of value, if you didn't work for it, right? And so because of that, and I've taken on clients at very, very low rates as well as free longer term trials. The clients that pay more are always the most committed, hardest working, best result, strongest testimonial type of clientele. And I've done this with thousands of fitness clients, online and offline. And over again, the clients that paid $100 always wanted more, complained more, had more issues, needed way more out of you in the service than the $2,000 or $3,000 client. So if you're doing the same or way less work for a higher paying client, why consistently try to get lower paid clients and quadruple your work? That's only one of the concerns, but we'll just stick there for now. Okay. All right. So in terms of sales, it doesn't ever have to be icky. It doesn't have to be done the wrong way. You don't ever have to feel like you're pressuring someone into a sale. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to pause real quick just so I have an idea. How many of you are uncomfortable to some degree with sales? Just give me a yes if you are or have been to some degree uncomfortable with sales. Absolutely yes. See who else. If you're not, you can just say no. That's totally cool as well. Yes. Okay, we got a couple no's, so that's good. That's good. I assume some of you guys have, like, Tim, maybe you have some background on it or something like that. Okay, cool. So the majority of us have had some level of discomfort. Super, super normal. All right, so let's dive into it a little bit. So there's 4 metrics of sales. The first one is communication, the second one is connection, the third one is relationship building, and the fourth is EQ, so emotional intelligence, okay? So this framework, it really simplifies the entire sales process from start to finish. And I'm going to go over each and every single one with you guys and kind of go over some ways to be able to do this. The first one is clarify why the prospect is there in the first place. Number 2 is label the problem of the prospect. Overview the prospect's pain points. Sell the vacation. This one's a big one. And then explain away any concerns that they have. And the last one is R, so reinforcing that prospect's decision. So let's go into them one by one. Before I do that, also, like, just a very quick thing. When I first started as an entrepreneur, I just to give you some context, I had no idea I was going to be an entrepreneur. I wasn't that person who just thought, I was, going to be that person selling lemonade on the corner and then whatever the story is. It was essentially, well, I'm really good at doing this gym thing. I'm a great personal trainer. I'm going to start a business out of it. And when I started a business out of it, I had very ingrained in my mind that selling was a bad thing. That I had, and think of every like negative notion associated with selling. I had those beliefs. So aside from me giving you these strategies, for those of you who said yes and who currently feel that, it's not just strategy. It's also working through the mental blocks that have created certain thought patterns that make you think selling has some kind of negative notion to it to an extent. So just something to think about. I definitely was there, and it took about a year of just self work to really get past some of those stories of why selling was bad. Okay. So that aside, let's go into the first thing. First thing is clarifying why the prospect is there in the first place. So this is where you find out what they need help with, and you want to find out their goals, not just like superficial goals, but their why. So one of the biggest mistakes a lot of trainers make, and I've listened to a lot of sales calls with trainers, is they'll ask the goal and the person will say, oh, I want to get jacked, or I want to lose fat, or I want a big booty, or whatever the superficial goal is. I'm like, awesome. Next thing, next question, instead of really diving into the why behind what it is that they want, right? There's always a deeper reason as to why they're looking for what they want. And in the first one, your goal is to really understand what the reason is. So I give an example here, and I said wanting to be a good parent to their kids, being embarrassed to look in the mirror, naked before a shower. It could be them being out of breath and they're going up the stairs and feeling bad. It could be them changing in the corner in front of their spouse because they don't want their spouse to see them naked because they're too embarrassed. It could be, not looking in the mirror before they go into the shower. It could be wearing tight clothes and all they're thinking about at a get together is the rolls or on their stomach that they're feeling, right? Like these are all very, very specific examples, if you notice. And the reason why I didn't make them up, these are just things that clients have told me over and over and over again. And those are the things that drive them to make the decision to make change. It's not just, I want to be fit, I want to be healthy. You want to be fit for what? You want to be healthy for what? And then really just kind of driving and understanding that, and then building kind of the framework of how you help them around that. I'm going to pause real quick because I think that was a lot. Does that make sense? If it makes sense, just give me a make sense. What I just said makes sense. Give me make sense. This one's very, very important. Makes sense, makes sense, makes sense. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Cool, cool, cool. All right, let's continue. Okay, let me expand this a bit. All right, so the next one is labeling the problem of the prospect. So what's their biggest struggle in reaching their goal? What's not working for them right now, right? And you'll see here in quotes, I said, throw rocks at their enemies with them. And I'll explain that in a second. But you really want to find out what the barrier is between what they want and why they're not getting it. Okay. So it's going to be all sorts of things. It's probably going to be the diet industry. It's going to be the restrictive diets and programs that they've tried. It's going to be someone forcing them into a certain type of workout that they don't like. It's going to be that they're way too busy. It's going to be that what it requires they don't have time for what it requires, whatever their reason is. And the quote, throw rocks at their enemy with them, I read it from a book many years ago. And it was the idea of really just being on their side in where they're at. So let's say they said, I worked with a trainer and they gave me this really strict program and it had lots of chicken and asparagus and this and that. Instead of saying, well, like that's kind of what you need in order to get results, like you want to be there with them. You want to hear them for what they're saying, because ultimately, if there's any kind of like friction or disagreement as to where you're at, in this moment, yes, you need to tell them. But in this moment, and this is really important for coaches, it is not a coaching moment. It is there to be there with them and allow them to vent, because most of the time, psychologically, people don't want to take responsibility for whatever it might have been. It could be a combination of external, internal factors, whatever your belief pattern is. That's not the point. The point is really just listening to them with where they're at and understanding their mind frame, their today position on why they think they're not getting that result, and really helping them work through that. Okay, that's very, very important. Next thing is overview of the prospect's pain points. So ask them about the things they've done in the past. So get them to explain to you why they didn't like it or why it didn't work. So like maybe they said, I tried P90X and it was terrible, or I tried keto but I really like carbs, and this person told me it's anti-inflammatory, and then I had this trainer put me on intermittent fasting, and then I was starving all day, and all I could think about was whatever it is, right? And you're going to hear all sorts of things like that, but really work on understanding, well, what have they done in the past that in their mind, right, in their belief, they feel like doesn't work or doesn't work for them. Because obviously you don't want to propose something, at least not now, that isn't what they believe works for them right now, and really just working on understanding their mind of frame for the barriers at hand to where they want to be. Okay. Next thing is sell the vacation. Okay. So this is, I know I keep saying things are important, but this one's very important because I've seen a lot of these mistakes, right, on the calls that I've audited for personal trainers. And one of the biggest things is, because we don't really know how to drive a prospective client conversation, a sales conversation, whatever you want to call it, we end up trying to amplify the actual product, the actual service. So yeah, I have this super amazing app, and I have the super amazing nutrition program, and I'm going to cater it to you, and we're going to be doing check-ins every day, or I'm going to give you this type of workout in the gym, and we're going to make sure. That's fine. It's okay to talk about what we call the deliverables, so the things that are going to be included in the plan, and you absolutely should. I'm not saying not to do that, but what you don't want to do is have that be the only thing and drive it as the main reason they should work with you. Because if you do, there's another hundreds of millions of trainers out there that can do the same thing, right? So what sell the vacation means, think about it this way. Think about, if you go on a vacation, you're not selling the plane ride, you're selling the actual destination. So you're not talking about how it was super tight on the plane and how it was really exhausting, and the AC was on so cold, hot, so intense, you were freezing, and then it was really hot, and the food didn't taste that good, and you had no space, you're sitting beside someone who was stinky, like whatever, right? You're selling that you got there and they give you a lei with a welcome drink, and it was sunny and there was palm trees everywhere and you were excited. That's what you're selling, is the destination. And so it's the same thing when it comes to these conversations. So what you want to do is talk about the result. Talk about what they're going to feel like and how the result will change their status, right? If that's what it is. So, for example, you can say those things that are included, but you also want to drive home. But ultimately, Jane, the goal here is to make sure that by March 27th, we get you in that XYZ wedding dress that you've bought and have waited for. And in order for us to do that, we want to do XYZ. So really driving the result. So this is what we want to do. Here's the result. The goal is to get you here. The goal is to get you here. Wherever they said in the C of the closer framework, the first step, that this is what they want, that this is the result that they're looking for. So the goal is, Jane, to just make sure you get to a point where you want to have sex with the lights on. You want to look in the mirror every time you get naked before you jump into the shower. You want to wear a bikini on the weekends when it's sunny out and it's summertime, instead of dreading that season, right? And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but like really just driving home what their main reason is for wanting to do this. All right, I'm gonna pause real quick and then we'll move on to the next one. Questions, comments, if it just makes sense and you're following, give me one more makes sense. You're going to make a post about this. That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I would too. One really quick thing, I used to actually make posts after every sales call I had because it was very, very good inspiration for strong copywriting. Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. Can you go back over C? Sure. All right. So let's come back here. So clarify why the prospect is there is the first one. Like, what drove them to come here in the first place? So it's like literally as simple as asking, like, what was your biggest goal? What drove you to come to me? Like, what are you looking for? Right? So that's how you would have it in a conversation. The C stands for clarify. Clarify why the prospect is there. So hopefully that was helpful. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, so the next one is explaining away their concerns. Let me expand this. So, in other words, 90% of the time, you are going to have to overcome objections, right? Like slam dunk deals, unless it's from a referral, right? Like someone who already really trusts you, or it's a fluke. 90% of the time, you're going to have to overcome objections. And by the way, I've heard people say this before, like, this is not even possible. When people say, I don't want to force someone to do something, I don't want them to feel like it's pushy. It's like, you cannot force someone to do anything ever. And if you do, what happens is exactly what you think is going to happen. It's going to push them away. It's going to make them not want to. So if a guy comes up to a girl at a bar or vice versa, whatever, and they're first thing pushing to go home with you and you don't want to, like, them pushing isn't going to make it any better, right? And I give a lot of these analogies because it's really relatable. But and it's the same thing here. So the goal is to just ask them the right questions for them to come to the realization. And something I think is very empowering is your goal isn't to get them to say yes ever. Your goal is to help them make a decision, right? It's not to get a yes, because if someone's not a fit, someone's not a fit. If someone's not ready, someone's not ready. But your goal is to learn to ask the right questions at the right time to help them make a decision, preferably a decision that you think is going to be useful for them if they're the right clientele. Okay? So, here are the most common objections, right? So the first one is blaming circumstances. The second one is blaming others, right? Here's my spouse, here's my partner, here's my kids, here's time, money, whatever it might be, right? And there's a pre-frame in here. This is a bonus. So this is, really important. So before I was just checking, this is before the last one. So this was something that we started adding ourselves when I was running the online fitness business, and then started helping clientele do the same thing because the conversion substantially increased. So this is really, really powerful. So you still have to overcome objections near the end. So whatever reason they say for why they can't buy the product. But pre-framing will make your life a whole lot easier, because what it does is it isolates the decision. So instead of them throwing multiple objections at you, like, oh, I forgot my wallet, I'm in the car right now, can I call you back? Let me think about it. Let me check with my spouse. Oh, I'm not too sure. I'll get back to you tomorrow. Let me meditate on it. Like, there's all sorts of objections, but they all boil down to a few things. Is you want to pre-frame. Okay. And you do that by one, removing the maybe, that I got to think about it before even starting the conversation. And the second one is that I'll have to ask my spouse or the financial decision maker before I make a decision. Okay. So the maybe, I have to ask my spouse, and it's too expensive, are the three main objections. If we can get rid of the first two, the last one can be isolated very easily. And I can teach you guys how to do that. Okay. So financial. Is getting to the nitty gritty. So before we do this, here's how you pre-frame. I'm going to literally just say it to you. So I would say, I would go, obviously you have the conversation in the beginning, you want to build the rapport, but at the end I would say, so by the end of the call, you're going to have a few options. One is that you feel really good. I feel good. We both feel like it's a fit, and we decide to start working together. That's awesome. We'll celebrate. I'll send you onboarding details, all that good stuff. Sound good? And they'll say, yes, sounds good. So the second option is, you just say flat out, no, this doesn't feel like a fit. Maybe you don't like, the way I talk. Maybe I'm too fast. You can make your own like kind of joke or whatever your personality is. Totally cool. Just give me a no. I promise I won't be offended. Cool. And you want to make sure that, you're getting their approval, that they're agreeing with you. And this is the last one. So you say, what some people do, and again, what I'm about to say, this is how I say it. You can say it how you want to so that it sounds authentic to you, but at least it gives you a skeleton to work off of. I'm not a fan of any kind of verbatim script because it feels uncomfortable for most people and it's not authentic to them. It's using the skeleton of a script to create your own lexicon, your own terminology, the way you speak of how you're going to switch them. Okay. So, with that said, now what some people say is they gotta check on some things, they gotta think about it, check with their dog, whatever. I've done a lot of calls like these, and so the last thing we want is, you come back months or even years later and feel bad, or you feel like this isn't something that you're looking for, and you feel like you're stuck in the same place. And so that's the last thing that I want to happen. So all we're looking for is either a hell yes or a hell no decision by the end of the call. And either way, we'll move forward. And if we're not a fit, I'll recommend you to someone or resources that I think is. Okay. So what you're saying here is, hey, I know that some people say maybe they got to think about it, whatever. And you're saying what you see. What I've seen in situations like this is people go away, they try a bunch of different diets. It doesn't work for them. They're not necessarily in the position that they want to be. And they come back years later feeling really frustrated with themselves. And that's kind of the last thing that I'm looking for you. So all we're looking for is for you to just make that hell yes or hell no decision by the end of the call. And either way, it's cool with me. Sound fair enough, right? And they say yes or no. That's it. Pause real quick. Questions or comments on that? I'll just give 1 second. If there's any questions or comments on that, just because it's not written actually on the slides. How do you track the blame game? How do you track non-cheap clients? In your copy, in how you speak, in your targeting. That's how you attract clients who can afford or are willing to spend. I can't type it out because I got to keep going, but I will repeat it. So just remember, I'll say it a little bit slower, but all you're saying is what some people will say, and you tell them, like, what do some people say? People say, I got to think about it. Let me check on some things, whatever it is. What some people say, I've done a lot of calls like this, and what some people say is, I got to check on some things. Let me think about it. Let me talk with my dog, my turtle. Trust me, I've heard a lot of different variations. And what I've noticed is that typically when people want to go think about it, they end up trying a bunch of different programs that they feel didn't work for them, and they come back months or even sometimes years later just feeling super frustrated. And that's the last thing what we're looking for you. So all I'm looking for, and then you go back to getting them to commit to either a yes or no, is either a hell yes or a hell no by the end of the call. And I promise either way, I'll be totally cool with it. Sound good? And they'll be like, yes, sound good. Okay. Hopefully that was helpful. All right, let's move on to the next one. So this is the financial objection. So getting to the nitty gritty of the financial. So there's one way that you can do this that I find works really well. And this is why I say that I don't really think price ultimately matters. So it really depends on what your absolute limit is on your package price. Because if someone really wants to do something and they tell you, like, hey, this is something that I want to do, but it's too expensive. The first time it's an objection. If they repeat it again, the second time it's going to be the truth, right? Because a lot of times people will throw a million different objections. If you hear the repeated, just expensive, but I really want to, just expensive, but I really want to, that's when you handle the objections. So what you want to do is first go through something we call the pain close cycle. So you first you have to make sure that you always hear them out, totally get it. Okay. And then you go back to their pain. And then after you go back to their pain and they say yes, and they go back to like, yes, this is just too expensive. That's when you get to the nitty gritty and you find out how much cash they have on hand after all expenses are paid, and then you offer a re-offer based on where they're financially at and based on what you're willing to do. Okay. I can't necessarily go fully into the details of this. If we get some extra time after, I will. But I just want to make sure I'm mindful of time. But how you deal with that financial objection is to create a re-offer based on their current financials. And sometimes people get scared of this, like, oh, I don't want to ask them about where their financial situation is at. And my response to that is, but how are you going to help them? Like, if they actually want to do it, I think the fear there is like, maybe they don't actually want to do it and they're just telling me it's too expensive. But like, if they actually want to do it, and this is something really important to them, but they don't know how they're going to make it financially work, it's your job to help them make it financially work in a way that works for you as a business and works for them as a client and is a reciprocal offer. Okay, that's the main goal here. Okay, so the last one is reinforcing their decision to buy. So once they've paid, you need to prevent buyer's remorse. And I have a very quick story on this. Um, you want to give them a hit of dopamine to reaffirm their purchase. So this is I was talking about those of you looking for live examples of sales calls. I have those, but I do no longer have those. So scratch that. I do have the sales script if anyone wants it. So the biggest thing with this one, and I'll tell you a really quick story about it, and I want to dive into the psychology behind it because I think it helps actually understand it. So when I first transitioned from an in-person trainer and I ran the gym to an online personal trainer and I built that business, I used what I would call in-person selling strategies. Like I said, they're very, very different online, and it failed miserably. So I had to learn how to build the skills of selling authentically and also doing it in the right way so that I could be able to build my business and bring in more clientele so that I could help more people. Okay. So the first two sales I ever got online were for $2,200 paid in full each, every single one. Both of them called and asked for refunds the next day. Both of them, they paid in full and asked for refunds the next way. And, years later, I was like, well, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And it's because I didn't reinforce the sale or back up my sale with logic. And so when you get oh, I forgot to expand this. Excuse me, guys. So when you get someone emotionally invested in something, but you don't rationalize the decision, things like this will happen. Because people will almost always get off of the phone and have buyer's remorse. So yes, you can emotionally amp someone up or really just work with the bigger reason behind why they want to lose weight, which a lot of times, or gain muscle or whatever, a lot of times there's some kind of like personal emotional reason behind it, and that's okay, right? That's what's going to drive them to do the things that they want to get the result. But the issue is, if you don't have a logic to back that up, you're going to run into trouble, you're going to run into buyer's remorse, and you're going to run into at least some refunds. And here's why. Because we buy with our emotional brain and we rationalize with our logical brain, right? So if you're just selling based on emotions, but you're not at all covering the logical side of why your program is different than everyone else, which is something that we showcase or teach clients, and like the 3 pillars of how they're different. It's very, 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 very important to differentiate yourself, because if you don't, you're going to blend in with every other trainer. Selling's going to be a lot harder. Getting leads is going to be a lot harder. Your cost per client acquisition when you start running ads is going to be a lot more expensive, right? So if you don't have anything that makes you stand out as a brand, this is what branding is, then you're going to consistently, until you fix this problem, have problems with converting people in the long term. So you need to sell with logic. And in order to do that, you need to differentiate why your program is different and is going to help them in a way that nobody else did so that they can see the results. And all that comes down to is positioning, which is something that I teach clients as well. It's like, how do we position this in a way that helps you stick out as someone completely different in the game? Okay. Very important. Quick pause. Questions, comments? Okay, some people want the script. Awesome, awesome. Just send me a DM on Instagram if you want the script and I'll send it to you. It's just, I'll put it in here for anyone who wants it. That way it makes things a bit easier. Awesome. Let's continue, guys. Okay. Here we go. So here's example of quote unquote dopamine hits to reinforce their buying decisions after they've already bought, because you don't want buyer's remorse. It's the last thing you want, right? So personal videos, handwritten card, swag boxes with like clothes that are from your company, personalized onboarding, timely communication within expectations. You want to get them excited. You want to get them amped up. Like if you just bought something that to you is expensive and then it's just silence after that, you might go into buyer's remorse. So really just making sure you're taking care of, you know, we can call it aftercare, whatever you want, where that client feels really good about their decision and they feel reinforced and excited about the next step with you, because they feel like, wow, I actually just bought into something that's going to change my life, as opposed to the million other programs I've already bought that haven't given me results. And they feel really supported in that. And that's what you want. Okay. So, just a quick thing here on the closer framework. And that's just that the closer framework needs to be followed in every step, or else it won't work, right? Sure, you can work a percentage of the time, but just try not to skip those steps as you're doing it, and use any script that you ever have as a skeleton instead of the end all be all. Otherwise, you're going to sound like a robot and it's going to be clear it's not coming from you. If I had a script right now and having this presentation to you guys, like, do you think 90% of you guys wouldn't notice? Like, you would, right? Because it's not authentic and we can smell that. Like, we're humans. Like, we can smell authenticity, inauthenticity. Maybe if they don't know it's a script, they know something's off, or they feel uncomfortable, they feel disconnected. Half of sales is connection. Half of sales is them liking you, right? I just had a sales conversation with a really massive fitness brand that I cannot name right now. And half of it was like, she was just like, yeah, you know, I really like your energy. And that, you know, gives an up over X other types of agencies that I've tried to speak to. Right. And it was a massive, massive brand. So regardless of anything, it plays a role in your conversion. And just remember that. All right. So, final thoughts on objections. Don't be afraid to handle objections. It's only pushy if you act, talk, or have a tone that's pushy, right? Watch the way you say things and be able to say nearly anything. And I'm going to give you a quick example and then I'm going to go into this, which is even more of an example. But you know, when I talked about pre-framing earlier, and some of you guys asked me to repeat the third step, which is, you know, some people say maybe, I got to think about it, whatever. That can be said in a tone that comes across super aggressive, but it's the same quote unquote script with a different tone. So if I were to say something like, yeah, you know, some people say maybe, I got to think about it, check with, you know, my dog, whatever it might be. Yeah, like, you know, I've taken a lot of calls and that's something I've heard before, but usually people end up coming back feeling like they've tried all these different diets, failing again, and then they come back to me feeling terrible about what they did. And so that's not what we're looking for you. That sounds a bit more feisty, right? Sounds a bit more feisty than the way that I said it before, because I'm not going to go over it again. But just remembering, like, it's not what you say specifically. You can say a lot of things. It's how you say it. Again, I'm going to give you a silly relationship example. If you come, for any of you who have been in any kind of somewhat long-term relationship, like, there's a communication involved, right? And if you come up with like how you say certain things, that person can take offensively or not. So instead of saying like in a relationship, let's say like, why'd you do that? I would just say like, I'm just curious. Like, just so I can understand, like, what was a driver for you to do that? Like, what were you thinking in your head when you're doing that, so I can understand as well, right? So it's just really coming from a place of ease and being aware of your own tonality. So one example to drive this home, I won't even go into example one. Let's go to the second one. I think it's a bit stronger. So this is, we can all agree, this is the same sentence said over and over and over again with one word highlighted more. So I'm going to go over it. I didn't say he hit his wife. 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 So who can agree here that this was the exact same sentence with emphasis on one word changing the entire sentence? Just give me an agree if we're all on the same page. Right. Right. So I mean, that tells you what a massive uh change that is just by changing your tonality and the way you speak. Okay? So a few things to round off here um before we hit kind of close on this is tell you a little bit about who I am. So I have a business coaching organization that helps health and wellness coaches grow and scale their business online and offline. So to date, we've helped over 1,000 plus coaches grow their business from anywhere from like 0 to 3,000 to 8,000 or 30,000 months on average. It just really depends on where that person is at, where their skill sets are, and then we just kind of start you off there. We've also helped gyms and personal trainers uh, get their business, not scale their business, that's a typo, to 1 million plus. So it's anywhere from beginners who are like, I just have no idea how to grow this business and I want to hit six figures to multiple six figure earners who want to now scale either with different marketing avenues, who want to improve their lead generation, who want to improve their branding, all of those good things. Okay. So, how can you even help me grow? So, first one is we help you build your long term and short term strategies to building a really strong brand. So, remember earlier when I was talking about like, you need to stand out. You can't sound like everyone else. How you speak, how you position, how you do creative is going to determine whether you blend in with the crowd or if you don't. That's a main thing. Because if you don't fix this problem, you're going to struggle with client acquisition until you fix this problem. And if you never fix this problem, you're always going to struggle with this. And I'm telling you this from someone who has already had 3 businesses and I've gone through this. I've gone through not doing this and I've gone through doing this. It's a massive difference because if you don't have that baseline of learning how you position yourself in a way that helps you stand out, you're going to struggle in all the other steps. Okay. So the second thing is just building automated systems that consistently bring in ideal clients that are financially qualified to work with you. Right. So I had someone ask, like, what, how do I get people who aren't broke? How do I get people who aren't cheap? How do I get people who can afford my services? Right. And a lot of that has to do with number two, building systems that consistently bring in ideal clients. So is that going to be via Meta? Is that going to be via social? Is that going to be via SEO? Is that going to be via X or Y? There's so many different channels, right, that you can bring in clientele. But the goal is how can we focus on the 1 to 2 who will get you to that next step of your business, whether you're at under your first six figures or above that and wanting to scale, and then growing from there. Okay. If you don't do these systems, all you're going to do is consistent outbound, which means that you're messaging people all day. You don't know where your next client's going to come from. And you're going to have really, really inconsistent months financially and feel like you have to work a part time job or feel obviously highly stressed because you don't know what your months are going to look like. And I know this is something a lot of coaches struggle with, mainly because I wasn't just one, I also have worked with many over the years. And so, really just focusing on dialing things in so that you're forecasting these problems and not having to struggle with them long term. Okay. So, the third one is building a business around your life design. And the reason why I talk about this is a lot of people get into business so that they can have freedom, be their own boss, help people in the way that they want to, all these different reasons that we have for it. A lot of times we come into it and we end up working more than we ever did than when we did have a boss. And so instead of going into it with the goal of like, I'm going to work around my own schedule, we end up working around the clock because we don't know how to create the right systems in the long term that are going to bring in results, but also a life that's going to be around the way we want to live it. So do you have kids? Do you want to travel? Do you want to not work 12 hours a day? Like what is the goal that you have for your life design? And then let's create business planning and work backwards based on the type of life that you're looking to live. So just a very simple concept that we keep in mind because I've definitely been through the whole idea of doing this the wrong way and then working way too many hours to the point where you guys saw at the beginning, I said I ended up shutting down that gym years ago. Okay. So 3 metrics necessary to grow your brand, to grow your business. First one is growing your brand. Second one is automated systems that attract the right type of clientele, not just clientele. And then life design, business building. Okay. So these are just some client testimonials from clients that we've worked with. We haven't just worked with clients in the fitness space. We worked with clients in different spaces as well, from like mental health to psychologists to mindset coaches, all that kind of stuff. But mostly we work with health and wellness professionals. And like you can just see here, like none of these clients are closing small deals. So 3K, 7K, 3K, 11K, 23K, like it's consistently clients coming in and hitting high ticket deals because they're selling a high ticket product to that right type of client that actually want to buy. So that's very, very, very important, especially for some of you guys that were asking about that. So quick invitation for anyone who does want help growing their business. We're offering a free strategy call. So we'll be with myself. It'll be about 30 minutes. We'll dive into your business, where you're at now, where you want to be, and then the biggest thing that's stopping you and really coming up with a roadmap of if we think it's a fit to potentially work together and take your business to that next step. Whether that's from 0 to 6 figures or whether that's from 6 figures to 7 figures, wherever it might be. We've definitely done both. So I am going to pause real quick. I'm also going to send an invitation link, and I think Aishwarya will make an announcement before we hop off.
Yes, Sarah, I already shared the link. And also, before we jump into the questions, let me quickly reintroduce Fitbut to those who joined late and don't have access to the platform yet. So, in summary, Fitbut helps you grow your fitness business with the power of your own app on iOS and Android. Our platform is the only tool you need to seamlessly run your fitness business and build a robust digital brand. For those interested in experiencing Fitbut firsthand, we offer a 30-day free trial. To explore more, you can schedule a demo with our team using the link which we'll just share in the chat. Now over to you, Sarah, for the Q&A sessions.
Awesome. Guys, if there's any questions, let me know. Before we do that, also, Aishwarya sent a link. One takes you to a landing page. The other one is directly to the Calendly. So that one is the last link that's in there right now. So if you want to just book directly, not be taken to the landing page, you can just click that. But evidently, they both take you to the calendar. So whichever will work. And then I'm going to quick pause and do a Q&A. There's a lot of people asking about the recording. Yes, there will be a recording that will be sent over to you from Fitbut via email, so no worries there. Aside from that, any thoughts, questions that I can clarify for you guys or answer for you guys before we hop off today? We'll wait like 1 minute to see if there's any questions. If not, then we'll hop off. You're welcome, Lisa. The most challenging case I ever worked with. Do you mean with a client in personal training, or do you mean with a client helping a personal trainer? I'm assuming you mean with a personal training client. Should you make an Instagram for your brand? You can, but that really depends on where you want your main client acquisition channels to be. So if Instagram is a main client acquisition channel for you right now, then yes, you should. However, you don't want your main marketing to come from a business account because engagement will be substantially lower than if it's coming from a personal account, at least until you hit several $100,000 a year and want to scale from there. But the personal touch is going to get way higher percentage of an engagement than a business page ever will. With a client helping a personal trainer. What automated would you recommend, or is that what you do? Uh, so I'm assuming you mean helping a personal trainer. So I'll answer that. So I think the biggest, it's not really a struggle. It's more so um depending on where that client is at, right? So some personal trainers have some background of marketing or lead generation or client fulfillment or retention or whatever it might be, right? And so if they have some background of that, we can build off of that and get results immediately, right? But if someone has no idea how to do any of those things, there has to be a learning curve to get to that next level. So it just really depends on where that client is at and working with them based on where they're at in that moment. So the easiest way to explain it to you is like if you get a brand new client and they're 400 pounds, the last thing you're going to do is get them to do really crazy TRX exercises, as an example, right? It's the last thing you're going to do. You get them to do body weight stuff. You're going to get them to strengthen their core. You're going to get them to really get to that next level so that you can advance them into a progression. It's the same thing with personal trainers. Where is the biggest struggle right now? What do we need to do next? And how can we do the right things in the right order to make sure that you are consistently seeing financial success in your business and maintaining client retention with your clients? Awesome, Lisa. Excited to chat with you. Hopefully that answered your question. Hopefully that was the question that you were asking. Does 100,000 plus clients do all virtual or in person or mix? Are you asking about the clients that I've helped? On my side, I helped over 1,000, not 100,000, just to clear that up. And two, it was all through one-on-one support. And in terms of the personal training, it was all online. And in terms of like personal training clients, it was a combination of in person and online. What's the easiest way to find your niche? Okay. So this is I'll give you what most people do to start off. What most people do to find their niche is, or niche, or whatever, however you pronounce it, is they typically find often an older version of themselves. So you have two options, either an older version of yourself. And the reason why people choose that is because they know that older version of themselves better. They know the pain points of that better. They know the struggles of that better. And so it's easier for them to make that transition because it's a known element. The problem with that sometimes lies in an older version of yourself in many aspects broke. Because if the answer is yes, you're going to have trouble getting clientele, right? And that's okay if that's an older version of you, but how can you combine an older version of you in one way with not an aspect of an older version of you in another way so that you're dealing with clientele who have financial success? And I'll give you a really quick example. I had this one client and he had a loss of both of his kids when they were born, and he wanted to work with grieving mothers. And in doing that, he wasn't able to get any clients because although that's where his heart was at, and although he understood that pain point, a lot of grieving mothers were on welfare, they were on government support, they were struggling financially because they were in pain and they were grieving and they were depressed and they had anxiety and they had all the things that clearly should do happen when something that terrible happens. And so while his heart was in the right place, it wasn't something tangible for a profitable business. What I did, my niche was mostly first responders and nurses. One, because I understood those pain points, and two, because for me it was just logically very easy to target via the social media channels and the different marketing channels that I had at the time. Awesome. What about someone new who is just starting a business? Any recommendations? Yeah. If you're starting a fitness business, you got to find out, do you want to be online? Do you want to be offline? Do you want to be a combination of both? And what are the next immediate steps to building that business? The next immediate steps are going to be coming up with your business name, coming up with your business branding, very, very important, and then trying to figure out what does my fulfillment look like and what are my lead acquisition strategies so that the business can thrive within the next few months. What is the best payment to take? Guys, there's no best payment to take. One Fitbud has a payment integration, so that's something that you guys can absolutely use. But I can just tell you as a general thought, most payment integrations charge the same amount, and so just find what's going to be the most seamless for you and the most seamless for your business, and can integrate with most of your tech stuff. Awesome. Let's see if there's any others. I think I answered most of the questions. If there's anything else and you want to, do you have them sign a liability agreement? They sign a contract. Um, awesome. So if there's any other questions or you want to potentially to explore working together, just book a call and we'll continue from there. But thank you so much, guys, for being here, and hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you all for joining us today. We'll be back soon with another exciting webinar.